Alrighty, so I wanted to make this video for quite some time, and I'm not even 100% sure if it's going to be super interesting or not, but I hope so. I hope you like it. And it's kind of more of a vloggy-esque thing. It's the day in the life of POLYInnovator. What does it look like? And so, considering my life has been pretty up and down over the last year, and I've had many different jobs over my life, that I figured I would give you a little bit of history first and kind of give you like, here's what it used to be like, here's what it used to be like when I started moving out, moving on my own, and started making more content, and here's what it's like now. So it's kind of three parts there. And so over the years, I have always been very much a techie and computer person and wanted to be more and more on my computer. And ever since COVID, especially, I've definitely increased the hours I've been on my computer. I'm almost like just a bit embedded into the computer. My bones are just in this computer itself. I don't know, I'm making a stupid joke, but like the couch people who are just attached to the couch kind of thing. I do exercise, so I want to make sure I preface that. So I'm not just sitting there. I do touch grass, but over the years, I've always wanted to do more and more and more. And so, what does my actually day look like to me? Not even sure what I'm saying here, but what does my day look like? And so in the morning, I wake up struggling. I've always had a hard time waking up at a decent time. And I think that this is a habit that I'm still working on throughout my 20s. Maybe when I'm in my 30s, I'll end up going to bed sooner because I'm just getting older. And that might help regulate some of the sleep a little bit better. I've always kind of been closer to what they call a sleep elite, where I get off better with less hours of sleep. But I've always been told that I need 8 hours or 6 to 8 hours at least. And so I try to get close to seven ish. And that way I'm in the middle. And so I usually wake up, and I don't know if it's a matter of quality of sleep, but I end up waking up kind of tired or groggy, especially if I get forced awake by an alarm. So I can't wait for the days where my work and my life revolves around my sleep schedule and energy levels. So that way, I think Zig Ziglar or something like that. Uh, oh, what's his name? Something Ziglar. He is a bodybuilder and a content creator, and he actually sleeps as much as he feels like he needs to, and that way he can basically just he moves all his meetings and work until after he wakes up. And if he needs to sleep in more one day, he lets his body do it. And I think it's super smart because your body is actually super important when it comes to sleep. And so sleep is really, really important when it comes to your body. I had to edit this video, I guess. I wanted to do a raw take, but and I'm gonna leave this part in, but I made a lot of mistakes already, so I'm gonna probably have to edit this so that way it actually makes sense to you. A day in the life of POLYInnovator. Well, POLYInnovator means like this polymath of innovation. That's my goal. It's my aspiration to go towards. And people call me a polymath now, and that's fine. I call myself a proto polymath because I still see myself on the journey to being a polymath. That's even what my newsletter is about. So I don't generally do the best when it comes to consistency and doing daily based tasks. I've always been better in sprints. Even when at my jobs, I've always been better in sprints. Give me a task to do and I'll sprint through it, but then give me a break. And it's very interesting because when it comes to content, consistency is key to growth, and making videos and blog posts and podcasts consistently, especially for multiple brands, it becomes a lot. And even if I was just doing POLYInnovator, not my other channels, it still was a lot. And it's kind of weird that I've actually increased the output that I'm doing when I was struggling even with my basic channel too. Ironically, I've actually done better now, I feel like, because it forced me to start batching. I hated batching before, now I do more. So, like I said in the beginning, I'm going to go through three different timelines: before I moved out, after I moved out, and then like post COVID. And so, when I was a teenager, I lived with my parents and my sister, and it was one of those things where family has always been important to me. I've always had family when it came to like we always had these family dinners, and you always had to kind of like contribute to the household in a way. So I had some chores, but mainly was taking care of my little sister. I often tell people that I basically raised her for the first 5 years of my life, even if my parents don't want to agree to that. That's what happened. I taught her how to say the alphabet in English and Spanish. I taught her dada and mama and dusty. Like I taught her everything. But my point is, my time was focused on school and eventually my work, which was swimming, but mainly lifeguarding at the time. And then I was doing stuff at home. Stuff at home. My mom would often like call me out to the living room, interrupt what I'm doing to go bring her a soda or something like that. And I'm not trying to paint her in a bad way, but it was frustrating when I would sit down and try to work on something like blogging, for example, or maybe researching some kind of new thing that I was hyper fixated on. Or if I was literally just playing a game and I was really obsessed with this game, having to interrupt that state of flow and go do something. And so, whether it was making dinner or getting a soda or taking care of my sister, it interrupted my flow quite a bit. And then I also had work too, so I would often interrupt my free time to go work. And so, when I was in high school and even a little bit past high school, I was still up until like basically right before I turned 19 is when I moved. And I ended up finding that I couldn't really get much done. I started blogging back when I was in high school, and that's probably why I didn't continue it in retrospect. It was like because I just was too busy with too many things, and I was struggling with school too because I was never much of an academic. And so it's just one of those things where that time period, even though I loved being on a computer, I loved playing games, I loved doing research, I loved actually learning new skills, and I could have probably used that time a lot more effectively and started this whole poly-innovator journey, 10 years sooner or 5 years sooner at least, had I not had some of those obstacles in my way. Maybe I should have quit my job, to be honest, focus on school, focus on poly-innovator and get that done. But I digress. Once I moved out around 19, I was able to finally have the freedom to control my diet, control how, when, and where I exercise, control how much I was playing video games or playing on the computer. And I definitely recall playing a lot of video games. I burned through the entire Mass Effect trilogy in a matter of like 2 weeks. And so I know I played a lot of games back then. I wasted a lot of time. But I mean, when you're like 20 years old, it makes sense. And around this time is also when I was going to karaoke religiously. Since I didn't have a car, I was walking 45 minutes each way. And so I would wake up and try to find some kind of thing for breakfast, usually like oatmeal or yogurt or something like that, and or just having some kind of caffeine. And I remember eating a lot back then because I taught so many hours of fitness classes and so much exercise on my own. I was doing about 20 hours of exercise a week, which is a part-time job. And so I literally was burning more calories than I could consume. So at some points I would get like a thin crust pizza, frozen pizza, and I would eat the entire thing for my like pre-teaching meal or post-teaching meal for a lot of that. And I would eat a lot of calories every day. That was what my life was like back then. I had to consume so many calories, upwards of 4,000 calories a day, because I was trying to gain weight for one, but on top of that, trying to maintain what I already had and not burn off more of my muscle. And so there was a lot of eating, a lot of gaming. And so I wasn't really in a whole lot when it comes to creating content or even really being active online at this point. I was experimenting a little bit, but then 2017 is when I really started kicking things off. I decided, I want to bring back the United Living Construct. And around this time, I was talking to a personal branding expert. I don't remember her name at the time I said. I think it's Brittany. I don't remember exactly her name, but I wanted to shout her out if I could. And it was funny because I didn't actually agree with her advice. Her advice was saying stop focusing on the United Living Contract and do a personal brand, or at the very least do both, but you should be doing the personal brand. And I didn't like that idea, but eventually I accepted it. And I think that's kind of been a common occurrence when it comes to some content creator lifestyle decisions. So just making a separate channel for a certain niche or something like that. It's not something I agree with, but I did it because it's what seems like it's the best option. And so even though people told me, I refused to do it until I finally accepted it. And so same thing with the Clips channel. I'm probably gonna make a Clips channel after this. And the ideas behind what I was trying to create were pretty grandiose, and I was trying to create a habit and system when it came to creating content. But back then, I didn't have enough reps under my belt to really know what I needed to do. So, like I talk about on the Poly Tools channel a lot, you have to put in 100 reps, and that includes every skill. So, if you're doing videos or blog posts or podcasts, each one has their own set of 100 reps. And you don't actually know what you're doing until you've done 100 reps, which means you actually have to apply those lessons for the next 100 after. And that's where it really gets confusing for a lot of people. Until you do 100 reps, you don't know what you don't know. And you don't know what skills you need, like editing and stuff like that, or how to learn them or anything like that, until you're forced to actually have to learn it. And then on top of that, you have to actually learn to apply those skills. And eventually you get better and better. So it's not until 300 reps that you're really actually decent at what you're doing. And so it's interesting to think about how I was creating these systems and I came up with all these cool ideas. And I ended up organizing them really well. And the organization factor is actually the knowledge management niche that I talk about now on this channel. And so it's really interesting how that evolved. I went from using Google Sheets and Airtable and ClickUp and Monday to try to organize my content. And ClickUp was really interesting. Even Taskade was around at that point. There was another one I really liked, and I don't remember what it's called. Oh, Tascamp? I don't know. Basecamp? No, it was something like that, I think. But Taskade I remember being around too, but I spent a lot of time with ClickUp. And the thing is with ClickUp, it actually allowed me to realize what I needed. And that was ClickUp only let you do like projects and tasks, or tasks and subtasks. And so you only had 2 layers of extraction. I kept feeling like I needed more than that. And eventually that led me to Notion twice. I hated it the first time. And using Notion allowed me to organize my life in a way I never did before. And that's what really blew up all my content production. It blew up all my PIOS thought process. And so I started creating the PIOS because I wanted 6 layers. I don't know why I decided on 6, but I had 6 in my mind. And then I found myself talking more and more about the systems I was creating rather than showcasing my own modular degree that I was pursuing or even talking about polymathy as much. It wasn't until 2020 where I started doing interviews and the polymathy concept kind of came back into focus. And over the last like 4 years, it was kind of duality. I had knowledge management and then polymathy. And so there were kind of like two separate pillars. It wasn't until late 2023 where I realized they kind of came together. It was a DNA strand. And so the knowledge management allows me to, sorry, the knowledge management allows me to pursue that polymathy in a much more efficient way. And so this idea of creating content around both really helped me evolve as a creator. And I've done more and more. Since 2020, I've been trying to catch up. So, like I said, in the late 2010s, I had all these ideas, and particularly, I wanted to optimize my ability to create omni-channel content. So you create, most people do like a video, you cut out the audio, make a podcast, and you cut out the transcription to make a blog post, transform it a little bit. And then you take all three and you disseminate it across social platforms. And that way you create once and then you can disseminate it across 80 different platforms. And I know that's exaggeration, but you do it like 80 times across maybe 10 different platforms. So 10 posts per platform or 8 posts per platform. And by doing that, it allows you to be a lot more efficient with your content production. You only have to create once and then you just repurpose it. A lot of repurposing people end up kind of diluting the quality of the pillar piece because they focus so much on the spreading and syndication. And then a lot of other people kind of focus too much on the pillar piece, but they don't spread it enough. And I've been kind of in the middle for the most part in my own journey. There's been a lot of times where I don't disseminate it enough, or I do, but then my pillar piece is not that great. And so what ended up happening was I wanted to create this omni content series where I was like, okay, every episode of this omni content series, it might be a different topic, but the strategy is going to be the same. I'm going to make a blog post and a video and probably make the video out of a slide deck that I also made because SlideShare was also a really big thing at the time. And I really wanted to take advantage of that. And I think that would have been cool had it stuck around. And then make an audio cast out of it. And it's because I'm a writer first, but it would have been easier had I just made a video or something like that. And it's interesting to think about how maybe now what I'll do is I'll make a video and then when I transcribe it, I'll take that transcription as a baseline and just make the blog post from that. And that might be an interesting way. I don't like making transcripts into blogs, but maybe if I could just use my creative juices, it might speed up the process for me. I do like doing outlines, and so sometimes I'll even use AI to come up with sometimes I'll use AI to come up with the section headings in order to figure out what's the flow of this blog post going to be like. Oh, excuse me, man. And so it's an interesting way of going about creating that series. But that's going on into the future. I don't want to talk about that just yet. Let's talk about the Omni content first. In that series, I had like 300 or 400 ideas. And within that series, I had a dozen mini series that were all related ideas. So like the Ikigai, how to be an influencer. One thing I released on this channel recently was a 4-pillar series. Finally came out with that after like 5 years of brewing on it. And so this idea was allowing me to create content a lot more efficiently. But I never got around to doing it consistently, even once a week, let alone once a month. And like if I just did it once a month, that would have been really good. And once a week would have been great. I would have been like perfect for consistency. And then the ideal was doing it once a day, 365 days of content. And one thing I've actually been toying with recently, a little tangent, is I love this idea of doing 365 interviews of content creators on the PolyTools channel. The problem is that's just a distraction, and I really need to be doing tool reviews. That would be what's really going to make me grow on that channel. But I like that idea, and that's 365 more people that I can connect with too. But maybe what I can do is bring back that idea of doing the Omni Content series, just 365 days of that. I think that'd be really interesting because now I already have a lot of automation set up to disseminate it across platforms. What I can maybe do is set up an image generator or something like that. I digress. I had all these ideas I was sitting on, and I made like 50 of them or something like that, maybe closer to 40, which is not a lot over the course of 5 years. And over 2023, I think I caught up a little bit, especially when it came to more prudent posts, but it wasn't a whole lot of quantity. And then last year I did a lot more quantity, but none of them were really super relevant to what I really needed to put the foundation for. The whole point of the Omni Content series, let alone even my siloed series, because I also had a separate database for blog posts and podcasts and videos, and then even Instagram too. And the whole point of doing those other series too was to talk about certain topics like knowledge management or polymathy to lay the groundwork and foundation for future topics, books, careers. That's the whole point of POLYInnovator, is to be the foundation for future careers. And so the fact that I was lacking on putting out that content meant that I didn't have the foundation to talk about things that were going to end up making me money, like books, or and actually be able to pay the bills, which is something I've been struggling with over the last half a decade, or even just making more content and growing at a more accelerated rate. And in turn, by growing, I'd make more money. And so this idea failed. And that's where I'm at now. And so at the end of 2024, I was still like, I've been wanting to do this sprint for the last 2 years, like a 60-day sprint or something like that. And yet it just didn't happen, where I would do like 3 posts a day and just get caught up to the 100 posts that I have left over. Technically, it's closer to like 150 if I count the podcasts and the videos and some of the other stuff. Like all together, it's about like 150 ideas. But even me making this video right now is one of the ideas that I've had around for a long time. And so I'm just trying to make some effort during this time to get as much out as possible without diluting quality at all. And even yesterday, I batched 7 blog posts out and just scheduled 1 per day. So I'm hoping that maybe I can just do that, just start scheduling them out and not worried about it, and just start creating more and more content, because I don't mind doubling up on a certain day. I just want to make sure I get it out into the world. And so I'm really excited for the future, because right now I'm doing this content blitz, not a sprint, but multiple sprints. So the first sprint was actually uploading videos and clips to Spotify. Another sprint has been making 370 text-based posts that go across Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Blue Sky, Mastodon, and Threads. And then one of the sprints I'm doing is actually the Polymath newsletter, where I wanted to create the whole year's worth of Polymath posts ahead of time, so I don't have to worry about it at all this year. Because that's one thing that's been distracting me, is like focusing on the consistency aspect distracts me from some of these big projects. And I'm hoping that this will give me the freedom to finish the books, not just one, but multiple books this year, and then even help move and stuff like that. Another sprint is actually the blog post, and it's the one I've probably been procrastinating on the most. It's probably they always say eat the frog, and that's probably the frog in this case. I've been snowballing. I've been doing more and more and more and more. Like on Saturday, I created maybe 9 videos out of a live stream I did with a friend, because we did it to help me batch record stuff, and 2 of which go on the POLYinnovator channel, 7 of which go on the PolyTools channel. And then on top of that, I could take the whole recording and make it into clips. And on top of that, I edited a whole interview as well as another video. And then I'm going to do another interview today, probably, or tomorrow. And I have more interviews scheduled for this Friday. So I'm getting closer and closer. Another sprint is actually finishing the 7th season of the Polycast. And so I've kind of gotten off track here about the day in the life. So I'll get back to that here in a second. But this sprint, this blitz, all these different sprints, that is what my day looks like right now. Where some days I'm not doing anything, and it's actually kind of stressing me out, but I do need breaks. And so there's some days I might just make 1 post and then that's it. And then my job situation, I'm working at a retail store, but now that the holidays are over, I have 1 shift in 2 weeks. Like, okay, that's not really counting as a job anymore at this point. So I've got to find a new job. And so I have been looking here and there, like every other day, spend an hour to go look for a job. I need to do like an hour a day probably. But I've been waking up and I struggle right now. And so I woke up this morning tired, but I had a meeting at 9 a.m., so I had to get up. Had some caffeine after the meeting, which lasted longer than I expected, but it was a good person to talk to. I had some more energy to burn off. Something I wanted to do yesterday that I failed, and I've been doing it every week, is doing calf raises. And this particular day, yesterday, I was supposed to do 450, and so I did that today, which is brutal. It's probably what gave me the energy to make this video as well, though, because it helped me push myself farther than I felt comfortable. And this particular video makes me feel a little uncomfortable. It's like, I don't like sharing my life. I don't like talking about myself as much. I mean, I kind of do, but not like this. And then after that, I was like, okay, I want to make some content. Could not get my brain to focus enough on the screen to make a blog post again. I might do it after this, but for some reason I just couldn't do it. I decided, let's make a video. This is the first topic that I saw that I was like, I can do this. And so maybe what I'll do is continue making videos after this and switch shirts and pretend it's a different day. But I wanted to make consistency factor a priority. And so batching is something that I used to not like, but now I'm getting more and more used to it. Just batching content ahead of time and scheduling it out. And that way for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks ahead, I have one short scheduled on the main channel every day until March, right? I'm trying to get myself ahead of time and not have to worry about creating content anymore. So this idea of creating a future pool of content that'll allow me to kind of focus on bigger projects, that's the idea. And so right now my daily life looks like that, where I made 7 blog posts yesterday, so I had 3 blocks of deep work where I got multiple posts done. And then Saturday I was basically editing all day. And today, don't know what today's going to look like. Didn't really fully plan it out. For some reason over the last year and a half, I have not lived off my calendar as much as I used to. I still follow it when there's like meetings or work shifts, but when it comes to poly-innovator stuff, I can't seem to get my brain to wrap around the idea that it's work. It is work. And so you have to sit down and do it. And so I'm working on that, but I'm still able to at least push myself to do those poly-innovator shifts just at different times. And maybe I'm a little bit delayed, or maybe I'm taking a little bit longer than I should, but I'm at least doing it. And I'm cranking out a lot of content. I'm hoping that I can finally catch up. I want to basically be out of ideas. Besides the blog post, I have like 6 different phases for that. I have plenty of ideas there. But with the videos and podcasts, I want to be out of ideas. I want to just make content based on relevant things that are important right now. And the YouTube's probably going to have an evolution here at some point when it comes to, I'm going to be talking a lot more about the POS and probably less about polymathy on the YouTube channel because I have the newsletter. Anytime I have an idea about polymathy, it's better to write that down anyways. And so that's where a lot of that kind of idea goes into. So the YouTube channel is going to get more and more into the POS. I still will do interviews about polymaths, but I am going to take a break from after doing season 7. I don't like these seasons lasting more than like 6 months, and it's lasted over a year. I definitely don't like them lasting more than a year because I started it early last year, and it's spread out because of my work and just procrastination and stuff like that. It spread out way too much. I was hoping to finish it by the end of the month. I'm only maybe 25 episodes into the season out of 42. There's a reason behind the 42 if you don't know. But the idea of finishing that allows me to just have it off my plate, not to spin it anymore. And I'll bring it back for sure. I definitely don't want it to end. I even have like plans for future seasons, but I need to take a break. I need to take a second to like not have to worry about getting interviews out. I might even take a break from the creator show for a little while too. Maybe I'll schedule some out ahead of time or something like that, but I need to stop making content for interviews. Other than that, my day in life is I struggle to wake up. I burn through some caffeine. I might do some exercise. I tried to start doing some work. I usually have a meeting in the morning anyway, so I either do a meeting or work. And then if I usually do the other thing. I try to have lunch, but generally I haven't had much hunger, and so I usually wait until like mid-afternoon or late afternoon to eat. I need to start getting better at eating maybe a couple eggs in the morning or something like that to get some protein in me, get some energy going. And then I really need to start walking more again. That would be good. After that, in the afternoon is when I have my kind of slump and energy, but I generally either work through it or take a nap. The naps kind of throw me off a little bit though, so I need to be careful. I need to take shorter naps. And then after that, I usually work pretty late. And so I end up staying up until like 11 working. And then after that, I kind of play on my phone for an hour or so, which isn't a good habit. I do need to get rid of it. I agree. But it's what I do. And so that's the day in the life of POLYInnovator. Thank you.